Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel, Average Black Girl. The video that you're about to see is from an event that I went to on Thursday. The event was called African Votes Matter, and it was put on by the Nigerian American Professional Association, the Chicago chapter. So in short, it was put on by NAPA. NAPA is one of the professional organizations that I have joined since moving back to Chicago. What you're going to see is him giving his opinion on Black votes in America, working through the system, and how we can all do our part. And so without further ado, let's get into the feature video. African Votes Matter, put on by NAPA. Thanks guys.
All the major newspapers in the city put out this thing about all the candidates running months before it happens, and yes, I'm one of them trying to get some yard signs for you to see me and stuff, but you could go on the internet and look at these things and sort of figure it out. The onus is on us. The responsibility is ours. To your point, you're absolutely right. It is tragic. And I joke with my students all the time. They know more about the Kardashians than they know about the candidates for presidential office. In 2004, there were more people that voted.
Up front with Jesse Jackson, PRI Smiley and West, WVON Radio, and a host of other periodicals, including Trumpet Magazine and Capital Commentary. So basically, he knows what he's talking about. That's what that means. So, Ted Williams, please join us, and please give a hand for him. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you all so much for having me tonight. It was an honor to be here. I'm excited. I already pledged to pay my NAPA dues for next year. So I'm super excited. So we're going to start with that. So we're talking about politics, and everybody's talking about politics right now. So somebody like me, I have a lot of fun this time of year. I do a lot of events like this, and it's been a lot of fun. When people think about politics, what is the first thing you think about with politics? Someone? Yes. Lies. I knew that was coming. Thank you, sir. You were not a plant. That's all I needed to know. Lies. Okay, so the one thing I will promise to you all tonight is that I will not lie to you. Okay, when I think about lying, I think about the story about a family whose dad brought home a robot one Christmas as a gift to his family. This robot had a special gift. The robot had a built-in lie detector in it. So whenever someone would lie, the robot would roll over to the person and smack them in the face. Okay? So the dad brings home the robot and he wants to test it out on his family. So he asks his son, he says, well, son, where did you go after school today? He said, well, Dad, I went to tutoring after school. And the robot rolls over to the boy and smacks the boy in the face. So then the dad goes, well, man, why don't you stop lying to me? Tell me the truth. But the boy goes, okay, Dad, I actually at one of my friend's house, but we were actually studying while we were there. Robot rolls over to the boy again and smacks him in the face. So the dad gets really upset at this point. He says, boy, when I was your age, I never, ever lied to my parents. What's wrong with you, boy? You're going to be like me. At which point the robot rolls over to the dad and smacks him in the face also. The mother sees all of this happening and she's watching from the background and she goes, like father, like son, he is your son, ha ha ha. Oh. And then robot rolls over to her and smacks her in the face as well. So, true story, no, not really. So I promise not to lie to you tonight. So I want to talk about politics, and we're going to have some questions coming and things like that. But I've been thinking about writing about politics for over 20 years now, and I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. How many guys are excited about the upcoming election? Maybe one. Okay, maybe one. Good. Okay, how many of you are not excited or are kind of tired of this wish it would all be over kind of feel? There we go. That's what I figured would happen. Well, it's interesting because a lot of Americans feel the way that you do. They're just kind of wanting it to be over. Unfortunately, we live in a country where people don't vote very often. Now, does anybody know what the voter turnout is for a presidential election? So what percentage of people are going to come out to vote this year for the election? Anybody have an idea? 30. Okay, 40, 38. You guys are so pessimistic.
I was going to go with 6.
Gosh, thank you. Can we, man, sheesh. Okay? So the voter turnout for presidential elections is about 55%. Okay. The Obama election was very high. The first one, 2008, was 60%. okay? But here's another question for you. So outside of the presidential election, we have what are called midterm elections. So every year outside of that, we have congressmen that run every 2 years, we have state representatives that run every 2 years, we have a municipal, local elections that happen every 4 years for us, so we're 15, we'll have them again in 19. What is the turnout for midterm elections? Anybody have an idea?
I'll go with 30.
20, 35, 13. Man, you all are really pessimistic tonight. Where's the hope and change? You know? 45. Okay, 45. So the midterm election voter turnout rate is 33%. Now, in the city of Chicago, when Mayor Rahm Emanuel was elected, first time, about 22% of the people came out to vote for him.
Wow.
Okay? So what you find is that people get kind of excited around the presidential election, but if you try to get people engaged outside of the presidential election, it's a real problem. And people are not being involved. Now, I talk to people a lot, and they tell me all the time, hey, I don't like politics, don't get involved in politics, you know, that's for people, for whatever reason, I try to be political. Politics, by definition, is basically two things. It's who gets what, where, why, and how, and the determination of what you think is right in a society, right? If you think about it, by determining what is right, we're setting laws for society. We're figuring out, hey, we think that people should not kill each other, okay? We think that people should not steal from each other. We're going to put that in law. The who gets what, where, why, and how is a distribution of resources. And in politics, there's an old saying that says, if you're not at the table in politics, you're probably on the menu. And so I tell people all the time, it's imperative for us to get engaged because there's a lot happening. Now this year, we not only, do we have another mic? This one's a little bit, it's going down, if I could. Appreciate it. Thank you, appreciate it, thank you. Yes, okay, cool, thank you, it's going down a little bit. So this year, we have more than just the presidential race going on. Now this presidential race is like none other I have ever seen. It is very tragic in certain ways, some of the things that are happening. But in reality, for someone who's trying to get students engaged in the political process, it's actually very exciting. Because they come into class every day talking about what, you know, one candidate said. I'm trying to be nonpartisan here. It's going to be very, very hard. I'm not going to lie to you. You know which candidate I'm talking about, who is famous for saying things. Interestingly enough, in American culture, because entertainment is so heavy in our culture, Trump is making a lot of money for CNN, for CBS, for MSNBC. I just read, I forget what the exact number is, but they have having a record year around elections. They, after the first debate, this is tragic if you think about it, after the first debate, because the debate was so watched, the second debate actually was the highest rated debate ever in history, okay? Because the debate was so watched, they knew the second debate was going to be so high, they quadrupled all their advertising for the debate. So what's happening is, and this is the tragedy in this, is that we're getting this cartoonish kind of presidential race because it's making a lot of money for the media. Not because it's good for us, not because it is important, but one candidate is really a walking soundbite. And the media loves it. So every time he opens his mouth, they run behind him to find out what he's going to say. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they are profit-driven and they're trying to make a living. So, outside of this race, we have other races that are going on. They're super, super important. We have a very important Senate race this year that's happening. Extremely, extremely important. The Senate race will have some level of impact potentially on the Supreme Court nomination that we have, school funding, a variety of things that are coming up, super important. We have the Illinois comptroller race, okay? Financial officers with the comptroller does the state level. We have the water reclamation district race, okay? How many of y'all like clean water? Clean water is good, right? We like clean, not dirty water, right? I asked that. We like clean air, clean water, those are good. That's a race that is going on that most people don't even think about. We have a state's attorney's race, okay? One of the reasons why we have a new potential state's attorney, well, we'll have a new one no matter what, whoever wins, is because of what happened in the Laquan McDonald case. And how the state's attorney, many people felt like did not do their proper job in prosecuting the police who killed Laquan McDonald. So this is a very, very important race. We have state representatives who are running every single 2 years they run. And most of them go unopposed. My current state representative is unopposed right now within the Democratic primary. The Republicans run somebody against him every year, but they don't actually do anything because in Chicago, we have a Democratic city, that's pretty much it. And so you have all these unopposed races. We have a state Senate race that's happening. So you go through the line, and if you look down a little bit, you'll see that there are a lot of races. And a lot of people who are incumbents who are in office are unopposed because people are not paying attention. When I ran for office, a couple years ago on the far south side. I'll tell you all my horror stories, some of my horror stories in a second. But one of the things that I shared, and someone that told me I thought was really kind of, funny and tragic as well. Because we have so many incumbents who are not getting opposed, politicians have to be challenged if they're going to be accountable to the community. Someone told me one time that politicians are like dirty diapers. They both stink really, really badly if you don't change them every now and then. And that's kind of what's happening in Chicago. We have a lot of folks who are in office. In fact, in American politics as a whole, I'll ask you guys another question. Do you know the percentage of incumbents who actually get reelected every year? Everybody have an idea of what that number is at the national level? Yeah, it's about 90%. About 90%. So literally 90% of the people who are in office in our country get reelected year after year after year. Okay, and why is that, right? Why is that? Why do you all think that is? Okay, so no term limits? Okay. People don't like change, okay? Better the devil you know. And this is probably a good answer right here. Better the devil you know, right? Oftentimes, voting for us in supposedly the greatest democracy in the world, right? This is what we hear, is no more than people walking into a booth, right? Looking at a list of candidates and doing this.
Vote today, I'm excited. Okay. All right, let's see. President. Okay. Yeah, Obama. Hope and change. I like Obama. Yeah, hope and change. What? I don't know, but it's all good. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay. Let's see. Congress. Congress. I saw a sign for Jesse Jackson outside, so I'll go ahead. Okay, Senate, I'm getting there. Senate, oh man, you know what? I just vote for Democrats down the line. I mean, that's probably easier. D. Now, judges. Ooh, I don't know any of these people. Okay. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. This person sounds like they're black, maybe I'll vote for that. They can't be that bad, Okay, great. And then selfie.
And then people walk out with a little badge. Oh, look, I voted. Hey, look at me. It's like, whoa, wait a second, right? So for me, I don't pat people on the back when they get involved in drives surrounding voter registration. What I'm more interested in is voter education. Because the education is even more important than the registration. People died so we could have the right to vote. But we go and we vote today in full and complete ignorance, and it is tragic. I would venture to say that is a more significant problem in this country today than even the fact that people don't turn out to vote. Okay, it's very, very scary. So I encourage people to educate themselves. Here is a tool that you can use right now to educate yourself. The Chicago Board of Elections, okay? You can go to their website. You can go on to a section that talks about, that says sample ballot, okay? Type in your address, your voter, actually it just says voter information, excuse me. Type in your address, the voter information section. Put your address in, you will get your voter, your polling place, etc. We can actually now, registration's over, but there's same-day registration now in Illinois, which they just passed like last year, for years, we could not register to vote late. Voter registration decreases voter turnout, right? So what happens is all the barriers you put in front of people just go, I won't vote. So now we finally have same-day voter registration after many, many years of this. You can type in, put your address in, download a sample ballot. You can fill out your ballot now and take it into the polls with you on November 8th. Okay? Chicago Board of Elections, it's I don't know what it is. Just Google it. Chicago Board, something like that. So, you know how you walk in and people are giving you all these papers and saying, hey, you can vote, blah, 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 da, da, da. And you can literally, and I tell people this, you can start preparing now, start researching now, start looking at these people now. And I tell people all the time, if you do not know about a race, do not vote on that race. Voting is like carrying a loaded weapon. You can do a lot of damage if you don't know what you're doing. You can just put people in office just because you're randomly voting, having the idea that you're exercising your right to vote, but you can do a lot of damage. So you can prepare yourselves now and take that sample ballot in with you. They can't stop you from doing that, by the way. And you can literally follow along with what you have already done, okay? Very, very important thing that we can do. We can also influence the process outside of voting, all right? When I ran for alderman in the city of Chicago, I was told that you could not run for office in the city of Chicago at a ward. Now the wards are there are 50 wards in the city, about 60,000 people per ward. They told me if you want to run, you got to raise at least $100,000. If you don't raise $100,000, you may as well not even run. Okay? So I marched my little happy self out and started knocking on doors and calling my family and calling my friends and saying, hey, you know, can you help a brother out? And I'm not going to tell you how much I raised, but let's just say I had a little bit short of 100,000. Let's just say I got a lot short of 100,000, but we're going to do it again one day. But what I realized is that it's not just voting that influences elections. There are 3 M's in politics: money, media, mobilization. Money, media, mobilization. If you can master the 3 M's of politics, you can get elected, and you can influence elections even outside of voting. Money is critical in American politics. The reason I didn't understand why it was so critical until I ran for office. And when I ran for office, I realized the reason why the money is critical is because people are not paying attention, so you have to buy their attention. You have to buy it through commercials. You have to buy it through billboards. You have to buy it through posters. You have to buy it through mailings that cost us about $10,000 per mailing in the ward. We only did 1. Our incumbent did probably about 20 mailings. Literally every couple days prior to the election, there were these big, beautiful color things coming to every single house in the ward because they could afford to put mailings out over and over again. So money is critical. The media is critical. The media influences the way we think in this country more than anything I would imagine. If you can get access to media, you can be serious. Look at what happened with our current governor, Bruce Browner, who no one knew anything about before he ran for office. But he bought media time. And he bought more media time, and more media time, and more media time. And before you knew it, he was the governor of the state with no political experience, just like the current gentleman running on the Republican side, Mr. Trump, without much political experience because he's able to get access to media. He did not even buy the media he's getting, by the way. He's only getting it because of who he is. There's a story, I forget, there's some number out floating around in the media. I think it's like 80 million or something like that about the free media that he's been getting. Just because of his character and personality and that sort of thing is getting. So if you can get in the media, you become legitimate. Without media, you're not legitimate at all. Unfortunately, in this country, it's just the way it goes. Last but not least, mobilization. Mobilization means getting bodies out in the streets. Politicians are afraid of people. Okay? If you think about it, unfortunately, to be in politics, you don't have to necessarily be a leader. You have to be a person who figures out sort of which way the winds are blowing. It kind of hops in. And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful because there's some good politicians out there, but the fact of the matter is that's what most of them are doing. So many people are literally saying, okay, what direction do you want me to take on this issue before they decide it because they don't want to take a position that's going to be unpopular in the community. Well, if you can get bodies in front of them, you know, get a couple seniors in your community together, okay? Get a couple t-shirts and march yourselves down to their office and get in front of them, and you will have a voice. Very simple stuff you can do. Very, very simple stuff. So money, media, mobilization. And I found out that without those 3, you cannot win an election. Now, money can buy the mobilization, by the way. Because unfortunately, in this country that we live in, you know, money is king. And so people want to help you, but they want to get paid too. And we spent thousands of dollars getting election workers on the day of the election just to get people out, okay? You can buy media too. So if you get the first M, you can get the other M's. If If you get the media, maybe you can get mobilization, etc., but you've got to have that in order to win. There's a real difference between the virtues of policy making and the practicality of politics. When I was a kid, I loved politics. I ran for school president. I got engaged in lots of things. I loved studying the civil rights movement and all those things. And I had a very idealistic way of looking at this process. And running for office changed that. I still believe in our democracy. I still love our democracy. I think our democracy is great. But I understand at the end of the day that if you don't play the game, you cannot win. Now, having said all that, for those of you who voted or not voted or whatever, you can influence the process through those areas that I told you about. You know, when you see people that are running for office, right, even if you don't live in their ward or whatever, you vote for them, you need to write them a check. You just say, hey, you know what, I believe in you, I'm going to hand you a check right now. Because other than that, they're out there by themselves. And the power of incumbency makes it so most races are David and Goliath situations. Most of them are. I believe Rahm Emanuel will be mayor as long as he wants to in the city. I believe Bruce Brown will be governor as long as he wants to in the state. I believe our state reps or state senators will be there as long as they want to. We have a current state representative who is the Speaker of the House for the state of Illinois by the name of Michael Madigan. He's been in office since 1970. Okay, 1970. Most of us weren't even born in 1970. Okay? Thank you, brother. I'm hanging on by a thread, man. I gotta use that, you know, to make me feel young. But yeah, so, and this gentleman is a great documentary if you have not seen it. I had a guy come to my class this week. The Illinois, check this out, it's amazing. Illinois Policy Institute. If you go to their website, they have a documentary called Madigan, Power and Privilege. And it shows you why Illinois is in the financial crisis that it's in. And it shows you the power players and the way they've locked in their influence so that other people cannot even get bills on the table. You talk about school funding in our state, Illinois is horribly behind in this area. We are 49 out of 50 states in the area of education inequality and in school funding. That's not by accident, because we have political brokers who stand in the way of getting any real progress done. There's a referendum question on the ballot this time. And that question asks, should we keep the money from the public roads and direct them to public roads? Keep it from transportation, direct to public roads? I would suggest that those of you who really want a direct opportunity to influence the election, get involved in these referendum movements. You can directly skip the politician in a referendum and vote on the things that affect you directly. This is one of them. Many people are supporting this, but I want you to be aware of it. So what I'm saying is that politics, it really does matter. Our votes matter. I want to take some questions. I got more we could say, but I want to stop in a second because I want to hear what you all are thinking and what you want to talk about and that sort of thing. But it is critical that you get engaged. Every single vote matters. People say the Electoral College is the reason why our vote does not matter in the presidency. But the reality is the Electoral College the popular vote influences the Electoral College. So in some rare cases, the popular vote and Electoral College won't match up, meaning the person who got more votes is not president. But in most cases, because of the popular vote will influence the electoral vote such that people who are the electoral votes will go the direction of the popular vote, and the person who got the most votes will go in the office. So people say all the time, I don't vote because of that. I say that's crazy because your vote still matters. In 1960, when John F. Kennedy ran for president, in the city of Chicago, one vote in every single precinct would have changed the outcome of the presidential election. One vote. One vote. Every one of us has the power to make a difference. Our vote matters. Our money matters. What we watch and support in media matters. How we mobilize and what we do, it matters. And so tonight, I hope that you guys are excited about this election. I hope that you're going to get engaged. I hope that this circus on TV has not discouraged you, because democracy is very important. Every single one of us is impacted by politics, whether we believe it or not. Whether we choose to be involved or not. When you wake up in the morning, you have air that's clean, hopefully. If it is or is not is really based on a political decision by the EPA. You drink water, it is regulated by the Water Reclamation District in this area. You open up your food, it's regulated by the FDA. You walk outside, you're on paved roads, those are paved by politicians. You have a death certificate, it's signed by a politician. Your birth certificate is signed by a politician. It's signed on the way in and the way out. Everything we do is connected to politics. We have to get involved. We've got to make sure our voice matters, and we've got to go forward so we can change our communities. Thank you all so much. Take a few questions, and we'll continue. Yes, sir.
Help me understand. I'm very, I like to feel as I'm very engaged. How do you get information about the judges? Like, that's the one that I'm like, okay, I want to get information by conviction record. I want data to break it down by race to see, I mean, how do I get that level of granular engagement? I think, to be honest, they are probably one of the most integral cogs in our system, as much as our aldermen.
Absolutely, absolutely. Judicial branch, this is politics 101. The executive branch, should I do this as a quiz for you guys? No, I'm going to do it to you. The executive branch enforces the law, legislative branch makes the laws, judicial branch interprets the law. And they interpret whether the health care law that Obama passed is good or bad or constitutional or not, etc. Very, very important point. So there are a couple of independent organizations that do judicial reviews. I have websites for a few of them. I would suggest, I forget what the exact organization is here in our state, I forget. There are a couple of them, a couple of judicial organizations that do that. So I will give you a link actually before we leave.
I'm in the Cook County Bar, Chicago Bar, and they don't give me any information I feel pertinent.
Okay.
To be kind of slanted.
So the Chicago Bar Association they do print out like a list.
Right.
So they qualify as, highly qualified.
But Chicago,
recommended.
so obviously it's a little bit
Chicago
slanted.
Right.
So,
Right. It's a subcommittee, and
Right.
they're judges on that committee as well, and most of those judges are not recommended. But it's slanted, but it's not biased, like as you would think it is. So it's one avenue.
Yeah.
Sure.
There are a couple spaces like that. If I'm not mistaken, the Tribune does a piece on the judges too, include everything else. Not their opinion, but you can actually look at the judges' responses to a host of questions and also look at their background and I believe there's some voting record information on there as well. So I've got links to all the stuff that you can use. But you're very right, it's super, super important to know these judges, and people just go blindly and just pick judges. And I would suggest the judges probably have more impact on your life than even the president may. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
So, yes, sir.
What would you say to those people who feel as if all politicians are the same? There's no reason for me to do my research. This guy is just like IG.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of people like that, who don't educate themselves, so they don't, there's a difference.
Well, you want the nice way to say it or the direct way to say it?
I want direct.
Okay.
Yeah.
The direct way is that's a cop-out. That's like saying all pastors are the same. That's like saying all business owners are the same. That's like saying all women are the same if I'm a guy or vice versa. It's just an excuse. Yes, there are some bad politicians out there, but there are some good ones out there too. The fact of the matter is that, there's this old saying that says power concedes nothing without a demand. So politicians are really as good as we make them be. And if we don't demand things, they're going to do what they're going to do. They're people. They want to keep their jobs. They want to have their kids go to school. They want those sorts of things. If you demand more from your politicians, they will give you more. And I say this all the time. If they don't, they got to go. That's what the Declaration of Independence says, that if the government is not doing its job, we have the right as the people to overthrow it. Well, the beauty of America, we get a chance to overthrow the government every 2 years. We got to take it. We have to take it.
So, like we were talking about term limits. We were talking about term limits earlier. My question is, when you look at the presidential election, there's term limits. You can only be president for 8 years.
Yes.
Why isn't it the same when it comes down to
Great.
Local government?
Okay. Thank you for asking that question. So, term limits in local government is at the behest, if you will, of the folks who are in local office. So let me give you a couple examples. Let's go through the country. Mayor of New York, term limits. Mayor of Los Angeles, term limits. Mayor of Chicago, no term limits. Governor of New York, term limits. Governor of California, term limits. If there weren't term limits, we still have Arnold Schwarzenegger as the governor of California, okay? Governor of Illinois, no term limits. In fact, there are barely term limits in any office in the state of Illinois. My uncle ran for alderman at the Country Club Hills last year. And the mayor of Country Club Hills had been there for about 40 years himself. He was not moving. He was entrenched. He'd given out favors. It was impossible to get him out. The only way they were able to move this guy out is they passed a bill to get term limits. Because they had term limits, Country Club Hills has a new mayor for the first time in 40 years. And this just happened just this last year. Now, let me be nonpartisan for a second. Honestly, in the state of Illinois, whether you believe it's right or wrong or a ploy or not, Rauner is actually arguing for term limits. Rauner is actually pushing for term limits. And some people say it's a ploy, I don't know. But we have to understand, I'm a person that's extremely nonpartisan. I support Democrats and I support Republicans because there's another old saying in politics that says in politics there are no permanent friends nor permanent enemies. There are only permanent interests. And so if you want term limits in Illinois, you need to find out what they're doing around this movement. I know for a fact this is being pushed at the state level by our governor right now.
So we're here for African votes. So my question to you, with 1.8 million first-generation Africans here, what is our true impact in the electoral process? Sure.
So I think, number one, I think the economic impact is huge. So obviously, the African immigrant population is an extremely highly educated population, more educated than any other group in the country. Being first or second generation, oftentimes you have families who are coming and starting businesses. What I think is important to understand is that in politics, economic power is very, very important. A lot of people are looking at who's in the position, but they're not looking at who put them there and who's funding them. Trust and believe. It blew me away one time, and I learned this in my own campaign, but I saw Obama on TV one day. And you guys probably see this a lot where you watch the news and President Obama's in town, and you're just hoping that he's not on your side of town because they shut the whole thing down. I know that's selfish, but that's the first thing I think of. Like, man, I hope he's in my neighborhood because now, it's going to shut the whole thing down. President Obama was in town a couple months ago, and they were like, President's in here, he's doing some fundraising. Oh, cool, like, where's he going? And they were like, oh yeah, he's going to this dude's house on the north side of the city. I said, how much money must you have to have a sitting president come to your house and have a dinner for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a plate thing? See, what I'm saying is that the economic power that immigrant communities have is critical because you can make or break elections if you stick together and push for an agenda. I think that it is as important as the vote. Lobbying is super important as well. If you look at, I just came from DC, I was in DC last week, there are thousands upon thousands of folks who are in DC for one purpose and one purpose only. Is to stand in front of those congressmen and stand in front of those senators and push an electoral agenda. And because I used to work for a congressman as well, I know that they will open the door for them if they feel like it's something that either they believe in or it will benefit them. So you can lobby, you can fund elections, those are critical things, and you can turn out to vote. But I would venture to say that those two are just as critical, if not more critical, than the issue of even voting.
You mentioned about Democrats and Republicans. I know that we have a tendency to vote Democratic down the line.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that and possibly if you can elaborate on what type of research people should be doing, because I know you may have a Republican or Democrat in your area that may be better suited for the position, and the other person doesn't get the same opportunity or chance.
Okay, so here's the other bad thing about our state. I hate to give you all the bad news. I'm trying to give you good news too. President's from here, we good, that. But here's it's a good thing, right? Okay, but the bad thing in Illinois is this. We are what's called a closed primary state. So that means that in the state of Illinois, if you were in the primary election, so the primary election, obviously we're running party, inside the party, running Democrats against each other, general elections where we are now. We're a closed primary state such that you have to declare a party if you want to vote in the primary. That means that if you decide that, hey, I like a Republican for the Senate and a Democrat for a congressman, I cannot vote for both of them in the primary. I can vote for one of them, hoping that the other won't make it through so I can vote for them in the general election. What this does is it makes sure that the parties have a firm lock on the power in the country. If you want to run for office, having gone through this, you want to run for state Congress in your community. You get hypothetically 5,000 signatures, something like that, right? If you are a Democrat or Republican. If you want to run as a third-party candidate, you need 7 or 8,000 signatures. They add 2,000 or 3,000 signatures. If you want to run as an independent, they'll add another 2,000 or 3,000. So what they do is they make sure that people who are not in the party cannot run for office. We also have this thing that just happened in our state. We had a redistricting referendum that was going to go on our state ballot. Meaning that in Illinois, currently, the people who are in, and this is crazy if you think about this, okay? The people who are in office draw the district lines for all of the districts in the state. Because it's not happening in every state, this happens in our state. It's kind of like Dwayne Wade getting together with the NBA referees and setting the rules every year for the NBA. Saying, I think we should move the three-pointers up this way. Actually, just for me though, by the way. Don't move them up for anybody else, okay? So when I shoot, everybody else will shoot here. When I shoot, it's right here, okay? This is exactly what's happening. Our politicians set the district. And if they do not like a particular candidate, potentially can draw them right out of the district. They also block the district so they're not competitive, so that if you get all of the Democrats together, which to your point, unfortunately, our people have aligned themselves with one party so that it's really easy to figure out if you're a Democrat or a Republican by the color of your skin in this country. It's very, very simple because African Americans vote over 90% for the Democratic Party. Well, they gerrymander these districts and they draw them out so that there's no competition, only Democrats win, and that we never get any turnover in the public offices. This is an issue that we literally just had denied by the state Supreme Court that said that we can't change our laws in this area this year. We ought to be upset about this. We ought to be extremely angry, and we ought to be writing our politicians saying, oh, wait a second. Why is it that California can have an independent group draw their district maps, and in Illinois it's a person like Mike Madigan who's been in office for 40 years who's drawing the maps? And believe you me, he has drawn competition out of his district. He has had people who have decided to run for office against him, and he will rewrite the map so that their block is no longer in the district. Their block. So, it's crazy. We've got to be aware of this stuff. We've got to hold these people accountable. The point is the Democrats and Republicans are both equally guilty in this area. And I think we've got to do something around that to bring more competition. But I tell you what, it is critical that you figure out who these folks are and do not give anyone your vote if they don't fight for your interest.
Yeah, so that's great. I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Sure.
Our lives and what are those roles and so forth?
Yeah, so Chicago has a 50 mini mayors. They call them aldermen, okay? And they get a certain amount of what's called menu money that they can literally spend throughout the district on pretty much whatever they want to. If you have a good, responsive alderman, you will get things done in your community. You'll see it. If you don't, you won't. And you got to then decide you're going to push them out and do somebody else. The other thing Chicago has under Mayor Daley, which I think is actually a very good thing, is that we have a local school council system. And these LSCs are open to the public. Every single one of you can run for an LSC in your community. That means that you now are not just a member of the community, but now you have a voice in terms of what principals get elected, how the school is funded, what's happening in the neighborhood. And many people have used the LSC as a platform to move themselves to higher levels of political influence in their local neighborhoods. So the LSC is very important. Education is funded at the state level. It's not funded by the federal government very heavily. It's funded primarily and distributed at the state level. So if you're interested in education issues, it is your state representative, it is your state senator you need to talk to. Don't talk to your alderman, don't call the federal government. Deal with those folks, because the tragedy as well in the way the schools are funded is that Illinois is drastically different from Indiana, which is drastically different from Wisconsin, which is drastically different from Minnesota around these educational issues. And I would tell you this, I am an optimist. there, for every issue that we look around and see despair and something not working, somebody's figured out how to work it out, right? Minnesota funds their schools very well. Nevada funds their schools very well. California has figured out term limits and the districting issue. They figured it out. Wisconsin has figured out how to take poor kids in poor communities and send them to private schools in suburban areas and pay for that and figure that out. So all you got to do is look around the country. I mean, before we had Obamacare, we had Romney Care in Massachusetts. Massachusetts figured out how to do the healthcare thing, which is hilarious, by the way. Just a quick side note, if you guys remember this story. So literally Massachusetts, they call the states the laboratories for democracy. Massachusetts did Obamacare at the state level before President Obama was in office. Mitt Romney, who ran against President Obama, was so proud of it. It was his signature achievement until he ran for president. Then they asked him, they said, well, didn't you do this thing? He said, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. What President Obama's doing is completely different than what I expected. I only wanted it for Massachusetts. He wants it for the whole country. I was like, what? Same exact plan. The Republicans made it up, the Democrats took it, and now we all have it, right? So what I'm saying is that the states are doing some stuff. They were able to do the healthcare thing before. We were able actually to change the laws in Illinois to move the age of insurance up to 26 so kids could stay on. That was done here. The president and the group of folks who were writing the legislation in Washington saw the model here, took it, and put it in at the state level. So I'm saying, let's find out where it's working. Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if anybody's from out there, I read that they have just figured out a way to give free internet access, free internet across the entire city. Right, rather than like we are all sort of, these, you walk into a space and you grab your phone and you're trying to find out what the Wi-Fi code is every single place you go. Imagine having a city where there's free Wi-Fi. It's possible and it's being done. So let's look around, let's find out what's being done, and let's hold our local folks accountable to say they're doing it there. Why can't we do it here?
I'd like to know what the Black Caucus position is in terms of the current presidential election and what they are prepared to do to address the situation in the African American community with aggressive mistreatment and oppression of African Americans by local police officers.
Very good question. The Black Caucus is obviously firmly in the lap, if you will, of the Democratic Party. There is no if, and, or but about that. You won't get any Black Caucus members who are going to go against that. In fact, the only independent Black Caucus member at the state level just lost his seat last year, which was Kim Duncan, who tried to fight for funding reform issues and that sort of thing. Went against Michael Madigan, who runs the state party and is the Illinois, the Speaker of the House. He went against him. They funded his opponent more than him, and he lost his seat. That's just kind of how it went. So around the issue of police brutality, I am not aware of what specifically the Black Caucus has pushed. But I would suggest that if you look at not only them, other Black politicians, the tragedy is that they are not putting forth a very clear agenda for the issues facing urban communities. I work with Operation Push as well with some other organizations. And, all the organizations have their pluses and their minuses, right? The BLM movement has its pluses and its minuses. Operation Push has its pluses. But I decided I was going to get involved with some of these groups. Jesse Jackson is really pushing Operation Push. They really worked hard. They're desiring to have an urban agenda and an urban conference. They're trying to hold Hillary to when she gets elected. If she gets elected, excuse me, sorry about that, strike that there. We're not partisan. But if she gets elected, to saying, okay, here are the 5 platforms that you've got to address in urban America. And if you don't, then you're never going to get our vote. The unfortunate part of President Obama's tenure is that because he was from the African American community, in certain ways he didn't have to be as responsive to the African American community in that way. And I think that the agenda that should have gone forward, I think people backed off of it. I'm hoping that they are going to go forward with this this time around. But I can tell you, most of the police brutality legislation is happening at the local level. I've read, I don't know if you guys saw Rahm Emanuel's budget address a couple weeks ago. but there was a lot of conversation about additional funding around this question, and psychological testing, a bunch of different things like that. So I'm hoping at the local level, I don't think that the national is going to happen, but at the local level, some things are going to happen. And last but not least on that, Kim Duncan put forth a psychological testing piece for the Illinois state legislature. It was blocked by Michael Madigan last year. So we got to know this stuff because these are the folks who you couldn't get out of what's called the Rules Committee because he blocked it. So even what's trying to happen, if we don't have the voice to say, you better push this forward, then it's not going to happen. So that's a kind of roundabout answer to the question.